Good morning, everybody. Yes, it's Labor Day. And yes, we're here. Why are we here? Because keeping you ignited with a life full of explosive significance is a daily routine. Doesn't matter if it's Labor Day. So what do we got today? We're going to talk to you very quickly about the 7 tips I give people. Someone emailed, or actually someone posted on Facebook some of the frustrations they were having. And I immediately wanted to jump in about feeling lost. And I have a process I use that when I hit rock bottom, how I bounce back up, but not just back to my old routine, how I bounce back to something fresh and something new. So we're going to cover my 7 tips for bouncing off of rock bottom and getting not just back to where you were, but traction in your life. So this episode's dedicated to Marin, and Marin posted publicly. So typically I don't share people's personal stories unless they've already shared it publicly. But I wanted to grab this because it was so heartfelt, and I think that there's something here for all of you who might feel lost from the pandemic or off track or unproductive, and you need to get back to that. So we're going to cover that today. And of course, we got other news for you. One of those is about the origins of Labor Day. We'll cover that pretty quickly. You can always Google that. What I think is going to completely unseat Ethereum, and I'm excited about. And one of my favorite things in the world, shared to me by Brock McKean. Man, thank you so much for sharing this link with me. It is the countdown to the first all-civilian crew to space, and why it's so groundbreaking. Not esoterically, like pragmatically, what records will they be setting, and then how you can check that out. But before anything else, what do we got today? We got morning cup of gratitude. What are you grateful for? What are you grateful for this morning? If you just woke up, I'll tone it down. What are you grateful for this morning? What is making you absolutely pumped to be alive? Grant, I don't know. I'm just trying to sleep in. Leave me be. Okay. Once you sleep in and you roll over and you turn off the alarm, I'm wondering what is getting you up. What are you grateful for this morning? And you know I'm going to share my cup of gratitude. Let's talk about it. First thing I'm grateful for, 2 things mainly. First thing I'm grateful for is I got up and I went to be at the gym at 4 this morning, and I was pumped, and I even had a caffeine tablet, and I was like, ready to go. And I pulled up and realized they don't open till late because it's Labor Day. Why am I grateful for this? 2 reasons. I'm grateful for this. Remember, I had 2 things I'm grateful for, but 2 reasons I'm grateful for this. 2 reasons I'm grateful for this is this. Number 1, I'm super grateful that the gym gave its overnight crew the evening off. I love it when we celebrate holidays. Holidays are culturally accepted reasons for us to pay homage or have even a token of a sacred space. So I was grateful that they didn't make their overnight staff work and kind of gave them a break. And I should have thought of that. Most holidays, like Black Friday, Marissa and I, we opt outside, and I recommend you do this. So I was super grateful to see that the local gym on a Labor Day gave the overnight crew off. The other reason is it forced me to walk the lake instead for my morning workout. I got a midday workout I'm going to do. But for my morning workout, I walked the lake and I listened to a book that's absolutely rocking me right now. Hat tip to Adam Welchel for pointing this out to me. And I've shared it with half a dozen people already. It's No More Mr. Nice Guy. And it's about maleness and where maleness, the history of maleness. And no, forgive the title. It's not about suddenly being machismo and tough. It's about why we always try to fake being machismo and tough, and why so many males find value in who they are based on the approval of the women in their life, and how to actually just find your own center of approval. Fantastic book. Fantastic book. So I'm grateful for that. The other thing I'm grateful for is community. I can't tell you that I can't tell you how often I might go out for a lunch. I sat with lunch with a good friend this week, JD, and we've known each other now for years. And it's been rich, and I want it to be richer, and I want to spend more time. So we had lunch. Then I ran into Rip Patel, and he was just awesome to sit and see. He's always so encouraging, and I love seeing, he just liked the show this morning. Good morning, Rip, man. How you doing, man? I always see this guy, and he's always up to something. He's always dressed dapper, but more than that, he always is complimentary and kind and encouraging. This is a top-notch, top-shelf individual. So I'm just grateful that I get to spend time in this community. I'm grateful for the time I've been able to spend in this community. And I'm grateful for the time that I get out and just see more of my people. That's what I'm grateful for. What are you grateful for? This is participatory, right? You're supposed to participate in this show. I'm not just lecturing you. I want to hear what's getting you lit this morning. Let's talk about other news. Real quick, you guys might have heard me tell the story that if you wanted to go to space, you can, just by competing in the shift payments or ship payments. Some e-commerce company and the CEO had always wanted to go to space. And he has an e-commerce company. He's nearly a billionaire, I think, and decided to personally fund an all-civilian crew to space. And it's called the Inspiration 4 trip. It's for civilians. Now, they're obviously going through, I don't know if it's obvious, they're going through SpaceX. That will be their provider for the rocket. They've purchased these seats. So much of the money will actually be given in a donation to St. Jude's, which is huge. They have several females on the crew, civilian females. They have a disabled person, or I don't even know what the politically correct term is, so please forgive me. But she is not even a paraplegic. She is missing a limb, which would prohibit you from going to space in any other space agency, but she has this opportunity. There's an older woman of color who's going, and it's been a dream of her to go, and she got selected. I believe there is also a senior. This is a massive trip, and it is breaking all kinds of records, and I'm getting chills thinking about it. And it's going to set the tone for civilian-funded spaceflight. Anyone can actually start hiring out these rockets, and of course there's safety issues, of course there's training issues, of course there's a lot that goes into it. But it is groundbreaking for many reasons. But the main reason this is groundbreaking is they will spend 3 whole days in space without trained astronauts. Now, this is mind-blowing. This is why this is groundbreaking, because they've actually taken civilians to space, and those civilians have been in space for a few days, but they've often been surrounded by 3, 4, or 5 other cosmonauts or astronauts who have been in space for many years. They might be in the space station, or they've been up in space like Richard Branson for very brief periods of time. This is a humongous amount of time for civilians, and they're trained, they're equipped, they're being made ready both by NASA and by SpaceX. Despite all of that, this is a groundbreaking trip. And so Brock McKean messaged me. We were messaging about a bunch of stuff yesterday, and I'm very grateful for my relationship with Brock. He's a fantastic guy, super sharp, super smart. But he shared with me 2 links that you got to check out. Number 1, he shared with me a Netflix link. There is a countdown to Inspiration 4. Let me put this in the comments here. This will be a Netflix special. I'm not always a fan of these Netflix specials that roll out they roll their episodes out slowly, but you can see that in the comments. There's a link right there to the Netflix special, and this one I will pay attention to because it is truly a countdown to humans being in space for an extended period of time. Real quick, I can't miss. Rut comes in and says he's grateful for Labor Day. That's the man right there himself. I'm grateful for Labor Day. And as an entrepreneur and a business owner and just an assertive guy, an ambitious guy, I love holidays like this because I can dabble in my work and get ahead for tomorrow, but I can also touch on passion projects and admin projects and still move forward without being interrupted. I'm super grateful as well, Rut, for Labor Day. So thanks for hopping in, bro. And then I've got another link for you for the Inspiration 4 crew. This is the actual website where they're featuring this. And both of these links came from Brock. So hat tip to Brock McKean. Check these out. We are so inspired. People like Brock, people like myself, we're so inspired that in our lifetime, and this has been on my dream machine for a long time, in our lifetime, we will have the opportunity to affordably go maybe to space, maybe to the moon, maybe beyond. I'm super pumped about this. I'm getting emotional thinking about it because part of what I'm going to talk about today down the way is the cosmic view. Whether you believe in God or whether you're an atheist, I don't care. Whether you're a Jainist or whether you're a Hindu or whether you're Muslim, I don't care. The cosmic view is the view that ties us together. Carl Sagan really proliferated that term. I don't think he came up with it, but I recommend you check it out. That's what's going on with the Inspiration 4 Space Crew. Let's talk about the cryptocurrency that may just unseat even Ethereum. Let's talk about it. So why am I thinking about crypto at all? For some of you who don't know, I spent some time. Good morning, Brock, man. Total hat tip to you today, sir, for these links. Well, 2 out of 3 of these articles came from my dialogues, my correspondences with Brock yesterday. So today I'm talking about Ethereum, and I'm talking about crypto in general for several reasons. Number one, I fully believe the metaverse is coming. It will both over-deliver and under-deliver in a variety of ways. I nerd out about the potential. I nerd out about the bleeding edge and what that could do for all sorts of industries. I do believe the metaverse will be the internet of 1997, 1998. But it will also fall flat, and it will also take a lot of time. And the technology is going to be kind of difficult for people to absorb. Specifically, deep virtual reality is still a long way off for us to really adopt. I do believe augmented reality will be a huge part of this. But why am I talking about the metaverse when I'm talking about crypto? Well, it starts with gaming, and I won't go into deep detail with this, but imagine if you were playing your favorite video game. Let's just call it Mario because everyone knows Mario. Only some of you know Fortnite. But let's say that you get a power-up in Mario, and for some reason, you love the little Tanuki suit from Super Mario 2. Yes, nerd alert, I did play Super Mario 2 in the 90s, and I loved the Tanuki suit. It was like Superman's cape. It did so much for you. You could turn to stone and nothing would hurt you. I loved the Tanuki suit. So imagine you got the Tanuki suit and suddenly you wanted to go play Call of Duty or Halo or some serious game, but you wanted to carry the suit from one game to the next. Now, because of reasons, technological reasons, that's not easy to do. But there is hope that the metaverse and gaming and crypto, a universally or largely adopted cryptocurrency, will allow you to transfer some of your goods from one game to another. How insane is that? You could get coins in Mario and go spend them at a coffee shop. How cool would that be? Well, this isn't too far off, at least in theory, at least in the math. We got a long way off for adoption. We got a long way off for user experience. We got a long way off for ledgers that actually can do this for you. But I am very nerding out because there are so many cool crypto projects right now that are showing promise in these areas. There's going to be a voracious fight to be the one who actually wins some of these distributed exchange arguments and currency converters and all kinds of fun stuff. But this has me thinking a little bit about Ethereum and Cardano. So I'm liking Cardano for a lot of reasons. For those of you who paid attention when I was really doing a lot on the show about crypto, I was big on Bitcoin because it's just a behemoth. It's going to be here for a while. There's inherent supply and demand. Ethereum is huge because it is a distributed app that you can build on. It's got its own coding language in it, and it has gotten more scalable, moving away from proof of work, or I guess more sustainable, if you will, as it's moved away from proof of work. And then the third one was Ripple, XRP. Ripple is a fantastic crypto. It was under $1, under $2 for the longest time. I bought some Ripple and Cardano when they were under 20 cents back in 2016, 2017. I bought more. And these dialogues I had with Brock had me looking closer at Cardano. Cardano actually has an architecture that looks like it could blow past Ethereum, and the big difference being the quantity of transactions that can be done at any single time, and how Cardano's approach to peer review is a quite novel approach, whereas a lot of the Ethereum people are only about proving their work through testing. And you got to test your platform, of course, and Cardano's not against testing. There's a lot of stuff under the hood. But if you actually go look at CoinMarketCap right now, or Coinbase, or if you look at any of these cryptos, you'll already see Cardano is already number 3 at a price point of just under $3. Now, keep in mind, I bought Cardano way back in the day, but what we're looking at, if Cardano can actually take up just a trading market share of Ethereum, if it can even steal a chunk of it, You're talking about a price point that's anywhere between the $3 it's about to break in, $30. And what some people are saying, what Brock was saying, and I was reviewing a lot of people, they're calling for a $300 Cardano. Now, that's not trading advice. I'm not telling you go do this. Another reason I really dig Cardano is it's super easy to stake. Basically, people can borrow Cardano, or exchanges can use the float of a borrowed Cardano. You can earn up to 5% on that. Now, there's a little bit of risk when you stake, but hardly any. It's almost a negligible risk. And for me, when I want to actually stake my Cardano, you can actually say, well, I don't want to stake it all. I just want to stake a little bit. But I think I want to earn 5% on my money while I also watch it grow. What if you could go to your bank account, watch it grow because of supply and demand? Cardano is also going to be kind of like Ethereum, where it's a distributed app. You can build apps on top of it, and it can actually facilitate a lot of these transactions. Well, what if you're going to start to get into the crypto universe, or I'm sorry, the metaverse with Cardano apps? What if you can develop on this app because the transactions are higher volume, meaning if I exchange one thing for the other, it happens nearly instantly. Ethereum's kind of like that, but right now, Ethereum's fees, get this, I tried to do an Ethereum transaction yesterday, and they were looking at charging me just a fee, $300 for a $200 transaction. Cardano doesn't have that problem. So I really recommend you check it out. There's two really cool videos I've got right here from a YouTuber I follow and like and trust. Here's one. And he explains what is Cardano and how Cardano is going, why he believes Cardano is going to blow up. And then also how to stake Cardano. So again, this is not trading advice. This is literally just me sharing what I'm looking at and where I'm putting my money based on conversations I've had with Brock, based on my own homework. So if you've ever wanted to kind of pay attention to kind of loosely what's going on in crypto, this is already one of the top three. It has unseated Ripple. Ripple will still contend maybe, once it gets out of litigation with the SEC. We don't know when that's going to happen, and a lot of its development has been stalled, I believe, because of this. So Cardano really does stand a chance to blow up. So I recommend you check that out. Nerd alert, I'm off my soapbox. Let's talk about something far more mundane. What's the origin of Labor Day? So I'll be quick about this. Origin of Labor Day, as we know, we celebrate the first Monday of September. It was actually kicked off in New York as a state holiday. Started off with a parade in New York City in 1882. And Marissa rightly said yesterday, well, it's probably kind of on the tail of the Industrial Revolution. And you're absolutely right, because it was organized originally by labor unions. Two gentlemen, Matthew McGuire and Peter McGuire, two very similar last names, but different gentlemen. One was the secretary of the Central Labor Union in New York, and the other was the vice president of the American Federation of Labor. And they decided to celebrate. So they got this to pass in the state of New York in 1882. They had a parade. And then 30 other states followed suit before it became a national holiday in 1894. So just some fun facts here. Here's a link to the article with just some highlights on what is Labor Day. Labor Day is one of those holidays that's like, well, they must have thought September looked a little lonely. So let's give that a holiday. Let's talk about when someone feels like they're full of potential and not going anywhere. And let's talk about this person who I have a massive respect for, because she puts herself out there so often. And she put herself out there. This was a public global post she posted. So I'm not sharing someone's private stuff, but I wanted to actually read verbatim the things she posted out to the world. And then my reflections on if this person were a coaching client, how I would advise them, at least off the cuff, on how to bounce off of rock bottom and not just bounce back to where they were, but bounce back to a point where you're focused on the future and what's possible for you. And let me talk about these. And some of them will just be quick bullets. Some of them I'll explain a little bit further, but I think it's critical that you have a whole set of tools by which when you hit an emotional rock bottom, you can bounce back. And I want you to not just, and this is super important, bouncing back to the same old thing is not an option. You'll see as I unpack this just a little bit that none of us want to bounce back to the same old thing. When we hit a low, we never want to go back to where we started. We want to progress. And this leads me to the first point. I've got 7 quick points. But actually, before I go there, let me actually read this person's post. She said, I know I am full of potential. I know I have drive. I'm responsible, hardworking, and dedicated. And she is. And then she says this. Yet I am lost. I'm unsure of direction. I'm in need of a push. I'm in need of an opportunity. I have so much to offer, yet no career path sounds interesting. However, I do know that I'm not meant for this merry-go-round of working for the weekend. Can you relate? Working hard to barely tread water. Do you have any advice from those who have felt this way, but have since found success? How did you stay hopeful? How did you stop the cycle of ordinary? How did you find the strength to fearlessly dive into the unknown? I'm not really looking for job suggestions unless you have an opportunity. And the unspoken sentences there that ends that in my mind is, I'm not really looking for job suggestions. I'm looking for suggestions to feel and be and act extraordinary. How I translate that is, I'm looking to ignite my own life of explosive significance, shared publicly by this awesome gal that I have a huge respect for. And I thought about this. Have you felt this way? I know I felt this way. I know that everything that is State of the Spark came out of an intense, long season, many years of feeling depressed, having a sense that I was made for more, not knowing where to put my skills. I wasn't an awesome coder, though I knew I could become one. I just wasn't moved to become a coder like maybe perhaps someone like Brock is. I felt like I struggled to know where I could contribute in the world that would also give a huge return to me, that I could also enjoy my life. And Brock actually jumps in right to the meat of the matter. Man, gosh, the way I solved that problem was finding something I was ready to die for. And if I could summarize my 7 points, it is this. And this could be said several ways. This is Brock's way of saying it. The samurai have a very similar function of staring death in the face every day, and it wasn't meant to make it intensity. It was partly to desensitize you to the prospect of death. But that purpose, the purpose of that function with samurai, was so that you get over having drama about dying a meaningless death, and you can start being free from these fears in order to clear your mind to focus on the something Brock is getting at right there. So I love this answer, and it is very sublime. But I want to give a few tactics or a few more pragmatical facets of this challenge. The first thing I wanted to point out from Martin was this. This comes from an innate knowing about one's potential. I'll drop that right here. So the first thought here is that when you feel this, this is called existential dread. This is existential dread, and nearly every human experiences it to some degree in some form. Now, I'm learning, or I'm beginning to believe, that nearly every emotional swing like this in humans can come from, you could call it our God calling, if you're a person of faith, and it almost doesn't matter. Most all the faiths kind of have that construct. It's a calling. It's what God wants for you to contribute to humanity. I was created in the image of my Creator, therefore I am creative. That is a valid framework, especially if you can understand the nuances of religion. We'll talk about that in some other show. Now, if you're an atheist or a humanist or just an agnostic, you don't have the luxury, if you will, of having that framework. But you do have an idea about evolutionary intent. I believe our species as a whole, and maybe on the individual, but as a whole, the species is really intelligent. We're all a bunch of living, pulsating neurons. And I believe the species itself has given birth to you and your makeup for your contribution to the perpetuation of the species. Now, we could unpack that another day in another context because there's a lot there. But I have these two contexts because, in my opinion, these are kind of two extremes. I mean, there's other frameworks to look at this. There's other gradients to assess. But in general, I think the most pervasive amongst most of you. Good morning, Dad. There's my dad, George Nadeau, popping in to say hey. I believe these are the two extremes for people. Most people that I encounter as a coach, most people I encounter as a friend, most students I talk to, most people in my public speaking audiences, they are experiencing something along this gradient where the two extremes are, I believe God has a calling for me and I'm not living up to it. I believe I have the potential for more, whether it's DNA, genetics, intelligence, or just desire, and I'm not living up to it. Both can be the cause of what we call existential dread. Am I on the right track? Am I doing the right thing? What if I'm missing the mark? And that's often a Christian thing. What if I'm doing the wrong thing that God doesn't want me to do? Or atheists think, man, what if I'm just not living my bliss or living joy? And if nothing matters, what am I not living my fullest happiness? Why don't I just bail on everything? This comes from an innate knowing of your potential. And I have a mad amount of respect for Lauren, who actually called that out. I know she started her whole thing as, I know I have extraordinary potential. So we feel this heavy. So that's part one. Part two is the A/B analysis, and this is a simple one that you'll get right away. An A/B analysis is point A and point B. Point A is where you are. A stands for R. Point B stands for where you want to be or where you think you should be. Sometimes that's shame. Sometimes if you're in a religious context, you might believe that you should be a minister, if you will, for an example. And you might not be a minister. So point A is where you're at. I'm just me. And point B is I should be a minister. I should be an extraordinary dad. And I feel like a crap dad. A/B analysis is a very simple mental model for this reason. If you have point A and point B, I think I should be a great husband. I'm a pretty decent husband, right? Like point A is like, I'm a pretty decent husband. Point B is I should be a great husband. And if you imagine a rubber band attaching point A to point B, those points of those paradigms of how I feel about myself are pretty close. There's no tension. There's very little tension. But the further you feel you are, point A is where you are, point B is where you think you should be. The more stretched out that rubber band gets psychologically. This is my mental metaphor for the degree of existential dread you might feel. If you feel you are strongly made for more, and if you go around with a story loop that you are not living up to your potential, and that feeling is big, if both of those are big, you're going to feel you're so far away, and that psychological rubber band is going to be so taut and so stretched, you feel like it's going to snap. I call this out because in some ways, we don't want to let ourselves off the hook because that existential dread we know drives us to make changes. Again, that could be an evolutionary process. That could be a spiritual process. Doesn't matter. It happens. And it drives us for more. So if we say, I think this is where I should be, and I think this is where I am, if you have a negative story loop, you are artificially creating existential dread for yourself. I have a very positive story loop, but that also kind of works against me a little bit in that I'm not always as ambitious as I should be to make massive change. Now, the other thing you can change on the A/B analysis is you can change what you want, what you think you're capable of. Now, I don't like that one because I like it when people believe they're capable of more. It drives them for more, but I really don't like it when people dog themselves. So you have these dials you could turn. So that was the second point. This is a component of existential dread. And you could even stop right there with those mechanisms and be like, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't be so hard on myself. And I can actually be easier on myself and be calm. Yes. And then you can actually, once you have a creative space in your brain, you can then start doing the hard work of deciding how you're going to achieve more with yourself. But you can't do it if you're dogging yourself and you're stretching your psyche out to the point where you can't even think. It's the rubber band. It's the A/B analysis rubber band model that I use when I do some coaching and training. Third point is this. Whether this is a special trait or God. All of it points to you having and knowing that you have a higher purpose. Oh, I already said that point. Let's get rid of that. Sorry. I just repeated myself. I'm getting rid of it now. Edit it. So the third one then is this. If you are here and find yourself in this spot, the number one thing you need to do is stop all unnecessary commitments. If you keep doing what you've always done, you're always going to get what you always got. And there's another phrase I use that what got me here won't get me there. So I have a very ingrained habit of my day. My day should look like X. But Marissa and I are making a lot of changes in our investments, in our empire, in our money, in our business. And one of the things we've been doing is confession time. We've been going to the gym in the middle of the afternoon. Why? Well, that's work time. You got to work this time. Well, the law of hypnotic rhythm can catch you. And you can just lull yourself to sleep. So we actually shifted our whole schedule. We couldn't do that unless we stopped the habits first. Now, my caveat is this. If you have to feed yourself and you have to take care of your mental health, and sometimes to take care of your mental health, you also need to take care of your physical health, right? Everyone can agree with that. Sometimes to break you out of a funk, a big old workout can help with that. So I say stop all distractions. If you are binging a show, stop the show. If you say that my day has to be regimented like this, ditch everything except the essential. Work, feeding yourself and feeding your family and your responsibilities. And 2, taking care of your mental health. Now, again, a lot of times for that's fitness for people. But I recommend you clear any non-essential commitments. Apologize. Call and apologize. Say, hey, I've got to do a bunch of stuff and do it for the next 2 weeks. Clear everything. Grant, what do I do instead? We'll get to that in a second. But you should be comfortably uncomfortable that I'm just going to take 2 weeks off of everything. If I have to stare at a wall for the next 2 weeks, I will. What you're doing is you're setting up an environment to listen to your inner self. You're setting up an environment to hear a new way, to set new patterns. You're literally taking time off of everything, especially everything that you feel addicted to. So if you're addicted to shows, you're addicted to alcohol, you're addicted to partying, whatever's got addicted to sugar, addicted to coffee, try to set aside, stop all commitments except the essential to providing and taking care of your mental health. So you create that space. The fourth thing is this. Do a download. Now, I cover this a little bit in my book. Again, this hasn't officially launched because I've been procrastinating. This whole book, The Top 100 Dream Igniter, is about the entire download process. And it's how I get everything out of my head when I'm feeling absolutely pent up and stuck. But part of what you're going to do in these 2 weeks is first rest your brain. You have all these loops. Well, I got it. No, you don't. You don't have to, and you don't should. Get rid of all the shoulds and have tos. Get rid of that out of your language. No. There's very little that you should do. There's very little that you have to do. And then once you have space, you do the download. Now, at the highest level, I won't go into this in detail because I got it all in the book, and it's a long process. But what this in principle is, I believe most people have a form or a degree of what we call ADHD. We have so many open loops, and open loops can be as intense as PTSD, or they could be as subtle as, oh, I forgot to get the grocery bags, and it's just always looping. I got to get to the post office. It's always looping in your head. The download is my process to get it out of your head in a physical, not digital, physical, tangible way, getting it organized, trashing what's not essential, and organizing what is important, putting everything in its place, and the catharsis that comes out of you, because not only is it out of your head, you'll actually fall asleep doing this the first few times because you'll just be so relieved. It'll be out of your head, but what you'll also begin to have is a higher level view, maybe not the cosmic view, but you'll have a higher level view of, oh my gosh, so this one path I'm on for, pick a thing, finish schooling, becoming a trainer, becoming a coach, you'll start to see how to hit multiple birds with one stone. Basically, a strategy emerges. That's what this book is all about. A strategy emerges. So I call this step 4 is the download. I call it doing the download. If you want more details, hit me up or join the Facebook Goals and Gratitude group. and we'll actually, that's right here, hit the Facebook Goals and Gratitude group, ask, and we can do more about that if you want to talk about it. I'll also eventually be releasing a course here, staythespark.com, as well as the book. That's neither here nor there. Number 5, you need new inputs. You need new inputs. Part of taking the 2 weeks off. Hey, Steve, thanks for the like. I appreciate you this morning, man. You need new inputs. You need new voices in your life. You need to actually hear from someone else, or you need to see new art, or you need to get rid of your normal Facebook feed and just dig through Feedly of one of your favorite, most uplifting websites around. But if you're in tech, you need to quit reading TechCrunch and get to new inputs. If you're in psychology, you need to quit reading Psychology Today and go read TechCrunch. You need new inputs. You need to mix it up. Go on a trip. I'm booking a Costa Rica trip here shortly. I just need a radically new set of inputs with new faces. You need new voices, new sights, new sounds, new inspirations, new books. If you've been reading the same old book for the last 5 years, put it away. I'm telling you, I read the Bible. The first time I became a Christian, I read the Bible through 16 times the first year, front to back. And I did a similar habit for years after that, until finally one year I just chose to not read the Bible at all that year. I needed new inputs. I still go back to the Bible now and again. Most of my friends wouldn't call me Christian, though I believe I am. But regardless, you need to interrupt the pattern. It's called a pattern interrupt. And we seek stability, but we also seek spontaneity. And the tough thing about that is stability often wins. Entropy, the law of hypnotic rhythm, it often wins because spontaneity seems so scary. But we do seek both. And this thing that Lauren's talking about is, I'm looking for a new opportunity. I'm looking for a breakthrough. This craving for spontaneity, you can scratch that itch by justifying heading on one of your trips, getting new inspirations, new inputs, but also being reflective about that. Let me take a quick pause before we do the last one. Brock says this. Brock says, I do the same thing multiple times a week with engineering. So many things pulling in different directions. Sometimes the only way to deal with that cognitive dissonance rubber band is to tangle with it directly. That's absolutely true. But more often than not, it's impossible. And the only way to deal with it is by creating constraint that avoids it altogether. Now, that's an interesting take, is creating a constraint that avoids it altogether. That could be. Now, another way creatives deal with this is, and what Brock does is actually highly creative, believe it or not, but it's also technical. So the trains in the brain can just totally crisscross and make things difficult. You know what really works? Put it down, go get a tea and walk around the park. Completely disengage. How many movies have you seen? How many times do we have to see this when we read about the greats, or we watch biographies about the greats, and when they got stuck, they did something completely different. They got a new input. They got outside. They took a trip. They unplugged in order to see it with a fresh mind. That's number 5, new inputs. And here's the last one. Ooh, this is going to mess with some people. Are you ready for the last one? And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. So hear me out and be patient with me as I share this one. Return to prayer. Now, anyone who I'm friends with who watches the show, you guys will just go, yeah, man, get with Jesus, or my meditation friends. Yeah, man, get to meditating. Totally. I'm talking to my atheist friends. Not to push you in a direction of a religion, but the placebo power of prayer is undeniably strong. Now, I was talking to 2 friends, Sammer and Jamila. We went to Dunedin this last Saturday and went kayaking and paddleboarding, and we just had a good old time, just milling about. And we paddled out to an island and got out of our boats and sat in the water. The water was a perfect temperature. And we got to talking, and it's a mixed group. There's someone who comes from an Islamic background. There's someone who comes from a mixed Christian background. There's me and Marissa who both come from Christian backgrounds. There's a person who comes from a shamanic background in the group. And we were sitting around and we talked about prayer. The thing I love about prayer is we talked about getting a higher level view. Sometimes you got to take 2 weeks off, get rid of all your commitments, clear your schedule, download, see things a new way, go for a trip. The ultimate view, to give you perspective, on what you should do with your life or the direction you should take to get unstuck. The ultimate view is what Carl Sagan called the cosmic view. Now, whether or not he ripped that from somebody else, I don't know. But I love the fact it came from Carl Sagan. And I look to my spiritual friends and I get so much out of their life. And I look to my atheist friends and I definitely get a lot out of their life. And there's plenty of missing that both could learn from one another, right? That's why I have these people in my spheres. I will call out one thing that I long for my atheist friends, and that is a ritual by which to move to the cosmic view. Now, my Christian friends or my spiritual friends might go, oh, why doesn't he just talk about God? I personally have a strong view that there is an intelligence, but the longer I go, the less I'm convinced on we know where that comes from. And I'm starting to believe more and more in the hive mind of humanity and maybe all of nature itself. And we could venture and wax philosophical about really esoteric things, but what I'm looking for is the framework and the paradigm that actually creates ecstasis. Now, if you're not familiar with ecstasis, obviously, if it's not obvious, comes from the root word ecstasy. There's a killer book out there. Is it on the shelf right here? No, I recommend this book, and it's called Stealing Fire by Peter Kotler, I think it is. And he talks about whether you are an atheist chasing a high of putting a spaceship in space and feeling in awe, or like Carl Sagan, seeing the pale blue dot, which is a speck on a mote. Like, these are very inspiring things to, I would propose, maybe the scientific mind. On the spiritual end, whether it's your Pentecostal service where you're self-hyperventilating and raising your arms, or a worship service, or just meditative prayer, what we're all chasing is a form of what the Greeks called ecstasis, the cosmic view. And Brock drops in here, and Jamie Wheel, and thank you, Brock. Again, something new I have never heard of. I'm going to totally check this out. Jamie Wheel, highly recommend. Oh, wait, you're talking about the book Stealing Fire, I think. Regardless, good recommendations. Thank you, sir. I think we all need to practice spirituality, no matter where we're at on the spectrum of atheist, agnostic to being a complete religious person. I don't care. Wherever you're at, it is a missing element of the human experience if you do not know how to access the highest view of things. Now, I mentioned my friends on Saturday because I even mentioned so far that I have something I call my secret council. And yes, it is imaginary, but I have nurtured this imagination so much that these people actually talk to me. There is a place, and Lisa Welsh jumps in there. Good morning, the lovely Lisa Welsh. Yes, spirituality can center your mind because you get out of your ego in those moments. And this is what we need. We need to get, at least for a little while. Ego has its place. Individuality has its place. Americanist version of individuality might be a little much. But, you know, for anyone watching, we probably grew up with that, and it's been the pride of who we are as Americans, staunch individualism. Some individualism is good. It moves the species forward. It creates this competition environment where we do more and pierce the veils and pierce the secrets of the world. Man, individualism is great. But getting rid of the ego is the breakthrough we're looking for. Now, we could talk about, you get this through meditation, maybe to a point. You get this through dosing, micro dosing or macro dosing. Well, my reports on those experiments forthcoming, right? I'm sure you know people who can report back that the loss of the ego has just been enriching and freeing, because the limitations you put on yourself, in this case, the gal who wrote this original post that we're even talking about, a lot of these dynamics of, well, I can't do this and I'm stuck over here and I'm not living up to my potential. When I mentioned point A and point B, how well I feel like I'm doing versus who I think I should be, and that stretches out. Well, listen, one solid mushroom dose, these will vaporize because the ego's gone, at least for that period of time. And that will allow you to get perspective and look down on the playing field and go, is that who I really want to be? And is that really who I am? No, I'm an extraordinary creature. It doesn't matter if you're atheist or Christian or Islamic. You are a wondrous creature. Now, also other creatures are pretty wondrous, but you are phenomenal. The fact that we've built hats and microphones and radio waves, and Brock jumps in here, and I do not disagree. DMT goes a long way. If you do Wim Hof breathing on very low doses, there's a little bit of euphoria. If you can do this Wim Hof breathing without a single narcotic, your brain generates enough DMT. And Brock says DMT, a little DMT goes a long way. Your body generates this, especially when you dream. What if you could access this just through breathing and prayer? There's a lot of reports that when you go into deep meditative prayer, you can drop some DMT. The God Particle is a great documentary. I recommend it. I believe it's still on Netflix. I'm not really sure. But my sixth and final point here, my sixth and final point for you is this. Please, it does not matter if you're an atheist or if you're a believer of some kind. You need prayer, because the ritual can access, if you believe in, here's my Christianese that I carry forward from my time in the church. You were fearfully and wonderfully made. There is a created function in your brain that allows you to get God's view, the cosmic view. You get instant perspective, or a dose of perspective. And then you can bring that to this time off I suggested Maren get, where you're actually taking time away and think, oh man, I can actually see a solution for the direction for my life. Now that's the Christianese version. The atheist or agnostic or I just don't know version, those scientific minded. Listen, we have evolved to preserve ourselves, and part of our species knows that we need to now and again step outside of our individuality in order to get perspective on how we can contribute best, and by contributing best, having fulfillment best. And we need that cosmic view. We think of it as the God view on one end. It's just the cosmic view on the other end. I don't care what your lingo is. It's the same function. And you get there with prayer, man. And that itself is pretty telling. Real quick, those points were, this all comes from an innate knowing of your potential. Doesn't matter if it's an evolved trait or a God trait. You have an innate knowing. The A-B analysis rubber band metaphor, the degree of how heavy you feel is a measure of either of how far apart you feel like you are versus where you think you should be. Number 3, stop all distractions, at least for the next 2 weeks, aside from providing for yourself and providing for your mental health. Stop everything, all the commitments, and you're going to feel immediately free. Number 4, do the download. I can get into that in more detail some other time. Number 5, do whatever it takes for new inputs, which is why I mentioned DMT or microdosing or travel or new friends. Call an old friend you haven't talked to in a long time, but new inputs. And number 6, return to prayer. Brock jumps in and says, boom. I meant outside of your body, Teehee, like actual chemical stimulation for DMT, but Wim Hof breathing and cold heat therapies can get you to the base of that infinite dimensional mountain, 100%. Like meditating, breathing, self-hypnosis, hot cold therapies, crossing the blood-brain barrier. You're getting this at the conscious level. The benefits can hit you at the conscious level. Listen, directly to Maren or people who have felt like Maren. I know I'm full of potential. I know I have drive. I'm responsible, hardworking, and dedicated, yet I'm lost and unsure of direction. Listen, the principles I gave you aren't going to solve it. You got to do the work. But much of the work is meant to remove your ego. Much of the work is meant to give you a new perspective, because I believe the answers are already inside you. You could call that pneuma, the Holy Spirit, or you could call that intuition, or group mind. I don't care. The answers are already inside you. And how do I know that? Because you feel bad about where you're at. And in feeling bad about where you're at, you unconsciously know where you should be. And when you give yourself the grace of giving yourself some time off to download the answers that are coming from a deep place inside of you, when you pray and can grab at those answers and write them down, when they come from an other place. Like if you just said, I want to be a physician, Like there's no inspired ecstasis. There's no inspire. Inspire, the word inspire comes from a Latin word inspire, and the loose meaning means to breathe with the breath of life. We don't have these inspired meanings when we just come right out of our conscious mind and go, well, I guess I'm going to be a doctor. Well, I guess I'll be a trainer. That's mine. Well, I guess I'll be a trainer. But when I go into prayer and ask God, the other, deities, infinite intelligence is one of my favorite terms for God. When I ask infinite intelligence, that could be me. It could be the human groupthink. It could be God. I'm open to all of it. Infinite intelligence. What should I do with my life? And if I quiet myself and a voice from the darkness says, train people. And it wasn't me. That spookiness that gives you chills in the back of your head, that turns into a mission. That's what I'm hoping for you. And that's what this book is all about here. That's what my process and the principles I've given you is, so that you hear that voice from something other than yourself. And that's where inspire comes from, to breathe with the breath of life, that moment of ecstasis. Listen, I hope this was helpful to you on a Labor Day. I'm giving it to you on a Labor Day because I think you could take some time off starting today and cut yourself some slack. You guys know what's up. If you ever want to join us, visit us at the Facebook Goals and Gratitude group. If you want tools and training, continue to watch us at stateofthespark.com. But no matter what you do today, remember the mission: igniting lives of explosive significance.